When you begin to think about what organizations can do, one of the key things that people begin to look at is how do you develop your team? How do you develop the organization? And is the emphasis on leaders or is it on leadership? You'll find that many organizations today are putting more emphasis on leadership, where there's a team effect that one looks at. Now, when we did this training recently for a number of people from a variety of corporations, we talked about certain key terms. We talked about leadership, we talked about culture, we talked about paradigms, we talked about team development, we talked about stakeholders and attributes. And one of the key things that we want to emphasize today is how do you deal with the dysfunctions of a team? And what are some of these dysfunctions? How do we get through those kinds of things? As we shared, and we'll share with you today, we'll talk about certain experts as Joseph C. Ross. He passed away just a few years ago, but certain critical things that Ross shared with many of us around the country and around the world is the importance of leadership and what that actually means. When we talk about artifacts that espouse values, when we talk about underlying basic assumptions, those are things associated with an expert by the name of Edgar Schein. When Edgar Schein talks about culture, he talks about it from the angle that it is important for a person to know what a culture is and what are the elements involved in culture. If we're going to work in the context of an organization, and it doesn't matter if it's a nonprofit or for-profit corporation, it is important for one to understand what a culture is. If you're talking about your home, most often your home also has its own culture that has developed over a period of time. And the role is to get your children then to function within that culture to develop them a particular way. When we deal with an organization, we also need to begin to think about what is the future of the organization. Why look at culture? Why look at leadership if we're not going to be concerned about the future? Well, one way to do that is to examine the paradigm that exists already. One particular person that I became familiar with as I was teaching graduate school to students in organizational leadership is a man by the name of Joe Barker. Joe Barker is considered to be a futurist, and he talks about paradigm effect, and paradigm shift. So those are some of the critical things. As we get more into our sharing and our time of training, we'll talk about what are some of the essential qualities of a team player. And of course, as I indicated just a few moments ago, we're also going to be talking about at least 5 dysfunctions of a team. My third point says this: you must thrust yourself into the heart of the matter. If you're going to succeed at anything, if an organization is going to succeed, you must use whatever resources are available to you at that moment, something in your bag, and you must be able to commit yourself to the task that is before you. Don't run away from it. Accept the challenge, reach into your bag, thrust yourself into the heart of the matter, and then point number 4, you must be able to bring down the giant in your life. I can think of some things in my own life that I've experienced that where they thought I wasn't going to be able to go to college, that I wasn't college material, but somehow, for me, it was a giant. Somebody has said it can't be done for you. You can't do it. But what happened ultimately is I went off to college, learned how to write in that process, ultimately became an award-winning writer, a columnist. At the same time, was able to finish college over a period of years and finish graduate school and finish a PhD. Well, what happened to the idea that you're not college material? It seemed at times for me, just as probably David experienced it, it was like a giant. But part of my goal with reachingyourdream.com is to teach people in organizations how to overcome obstacles. What decision-making processes do we need to consider? How do we then assess the kind of resources that are at our disposal to then be able to properly use those resources so that we can get to the heart of the matter and somehow be able to bring down whatever giant. So I believe that anything that we face in life, we're able to overcome it, but there needs to be a process by which we examine what we have already and never run away from it, but somehow size it up and say, I can do it.